Very pleased to be joined by Daniel Cormier, who will take on Frank Mir on Saturday in the UFC. How you doing this morning, my friend?
Doing pretty good, man. Resting my legs, just kind of laying back and relaxing. All the hard work is done, and now I'm just preparing myself mentally for battle on Saturday.
We had you on last time that you fought in Strikeforce, and ironically, with all of your great success, this will be your opening and debut in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Do you feel any differently about this as opposed to the fights that you've had in the past?
Not really, because, I try to keep it all in competitive terms, like, if I say, well, this is a bigger fight in the UFC because it's a bigger organization, it's tougher, but if I say, well, this is just another chance to compete like the NCAA tournament, a chance to compete like at the Olympics, a chance to compete like for the Strikeforce Championship, then there's no added pressure. I try to keep everything in terms of competition, not this fight is bigger than the next fight or this, it doesn't work that way, because if you do, it tends to kind of overwhelm you a little bit.
A lot of people have talked about the experience and the fact that Frank Mir is the former heavyweight champion, his grappling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu experience, which I believe is on a very high level. But I think people seem to and tend to overlook the fact that you're a two-time Olympic caliber wrestler. You won the Grand Prix in Strikeforce. You've just about faced every tough opponent that you could name in the heavyweight division in mixed martial arts. So, in your opinion, how do you stack up against this opponent on Saturday?
I think I match up well, man. I've got some advantages in the fight. He obviously has some advantages too. I openly admit that he's probably a better submission guy than I am. But, we're not submission grappling. We're going to be fighting in there. It's easy to throw up submissions when the guy's laying on top of you. Well, I'm going to be punching him. So it's a lot different then. But I think I match up well. I control where the fight takes place. I usually am in better shape cardio-wise than he is. And I'm faster.
That's going to be my next question. Yeah, how your cardio was. I was going to say, hey, how is your cardio? If there is any knock, if there be one, in the latter parts of fights, Frank Mir has a tendency in the past to kind of deteriorate on the cardio side. Do you feel that might be an advantage in your case?
Oh, yeah, because you've seen my fights. Obviously we're all going to get tired, but I still compete pretty well when I start to get tired. Frank, you can see the fatigue on him. You can see when he's fighting that he's starting to fatigue and he starts to slow down, So I think that's going to be one of my clear advantages.
There's been some talk that he will be a different fighter, having trained under Greg Jackson and Jackson's MMA, who hosts a bevy of top-quality fighters. But in my opinion, and I'm going to ask you your opinion on this, I don't know that really changes much because he was always good on the ground. I don't know what new they will offer Frank Mir that he hasn't already done and seen in the Las Vegas area where he's trained most of his fight career.
I think he's going to be in a little better shape. I think you'll see some physical differences. Like he'll be in a little better shape, and he'll have a clearer idea of how he wants to fight the fight. I think Greg's a great coach. I think Mike Winklejohn's a great coach. But I think for their influence to show on Frank Mir, it'll take a little longer than 6 weeks. You don't completely change a guy that's been fighting for 10 years in 6 weeks. It just doesn't work that way.
I agree with you. Our special guest right here on 102.3 ESPN, MMA Meltdown, Daniel Cormier, the undefeated heavyweight, and I'll say phenom, because at 11-0, no one has knocked you off your pedestal. You have won the Strikeforce Grand Prix. You've done an incredible job. So I've got to ask you this, Daniel. At what point does size and weight make a difference for you and the thought of maybe moving down to light heavyweight?
It hasn't so far, and I fought big guys. I fought Bigfoot Silva, who's probably one of the bigger heavyweights we have anymore, so it hasn't really made a difference yet, and so I haven't really thought about it. Obviously I've been clear. I would love some big fights down at 205, if I can get big fights down there. But I also would like to take big fights at heavyweight too. You know, I want to be like Randy, you know, where he fought up and down and fought the best of the best and just left his mark on the sport, you know, and that's really what I would like to do too as I wind down my career.
We always appreciate the time. We talked to you last time, if you recall, before you fought Dion Starring, and you made very short work of him back in January, and now here we are just a few months down the road, and you've got this big fight with Frank Mir. Does it mean anything to you and the resume on top of getting a victory to say, hey, I knocked off or I could knock off the former UFC heavyweight champion? After all, it does add to a list and a resume that has been pretty stellar up to this point.
Yeah, it's going to be great, man. You know, Frank will be my second UFC champion that I fought. I fought Josh Barnett, and Frank will be the fourth guy that I fought that has fought for the UFC heavyweight championship. Munson fought for it. Barnett won it. Mir will have won it, and Bigfoot Silva's now fighting for the UFC title. So he'll be the fourth guy that I fought that have fought for that belt, and, you know, every victory means a lot. And this one's going to mean just as much as any of the others, if not more.
You're in a strange or precarious situation right now that if you win, don't you train with the current UFC heavyweight champion on a fairly regular basis?
We train together every single day, actually.
So, but the odd thing is, unless he gets knocked off, you can't really ever fight for the heavyweight title because you're not going to go up and face your own teammate and sparring partner, correct?
And that's why I've talked openly about, you know, exploring the 205-pound division, because I hope Kane is a long-reigning champion. I don't want him to lose. I corner him every fight. I mean, we do our wrestling together twice a week, him and I, where we're just in the gym by ourselves sometimes. You know, I don't want to see that man lose. He's got a great family, great daughter, and I know that he's working his butt off to support them, and he's what a champion should be. You know, he carries himself in that way, works like a champion, and I want him to be a long-reigning champion. So that's why I've talked openly about exploring the division below, because I'm smaller now than I've been for a long time, and I do want to be the UFC champion.
What do you walk at, and what are you weighing right now with weigh-ins just tomorrow afternoon?
Well, I had been smaller during training camp, you know, and it was very concerning, you know, because a lot of practices I'd be 229, 228, and I was like, well, Frank's a big guy, so I need to be a little heavier. So I think I'll probably be 235 at the weigh-ins, hopefully. I hope I can be 235.
And Frank, you think will be around the 255, 260 mark?
Yeah, he usually comes in around 255, 260. In shape, he's around 255, 252. But sometimes he's 264, 265. Against JDS, I think he might have weighed 263, and he didn't look his best then.
And you are no stranger to giving up quite a bit of weight in every... I believe you've given up weight in every fight that you've fought, haven't you, Daniel?
Except for I fought Devin Cole once. He was smaller than I was because he was thinking about going down to 205. But outside of that, I've never outweighed the guy that I fight.
I'll paint the picture for you here if the weight cut wouldn't be too dramatic. After the fight that comes up after this UFC, Daniel Cormier at 205 and John Jones for the light heavyweight title. Have you gone that far in your thought process?
I did, and I did, but right now I'm just like so focused on Frank that I haven't really thought about it. You know, that's a process that I'm gonna have to sit down with the organization, with my management, and figure out. You know, but that would be something, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. Hey, I've got to ask you this: how do you like the crossover now between where you've been with Strikeforce and now you're dealing with Zuffa and the Ultimate Fighting Championship? Is there really any difference, or do you like what you see there and the treatment and maybe the fight opportunities that have been approached by them to you, including this Frank Mir fight?
Well, you know, with Strikeforce, I was with Strikeforce before the purchase, and I was with Strikeforce after the purchase. So for the last 2 years, Zuffa's run Strikeforce, so it hasn't been any different because I kind of got a taste of it in Strikeforce. But before, I guess it would just be a bigger crew of people the UFC has a bigger crew of people, so they're a little more organized. And both organizations treat you great. You know, Strikeforce was great to me, man. I never had any complaints about Strikeforce as an organization. Scott Coker and those guys treated me great from day one. So, outside of just having more resources and more people working to make it the process and everything easier, it's pretty much the same.
Last question for you, and I know you're busy, this being media day, and you got the weigh-ins tomorrow. What do you do today? Are you kind of winding down, or are you wound up in anticipation of your big fight on Saturday? And what's it like with that feeling? You said before you came on air that you're just lying around, so I have to ask what that feeling is like leading up to the weigh-ins and then finally getting to the fight, since all of the hard work's been done up to this point.
It's great, man. Trust me. It's great to just relax and play video games and watch TV and just relax. You know, obviously there's a lot of media obligations. You know, I'm on the phone a lot and I'm doing interviews a lot, but, you know, it's all part of the job, and I really appreciate that there's interest. So it's good, but the best thing about this is as I talk to you and everybody else I've spoken to this morning, I haven't had to move out of my bed.
That's super. Well, this is second time around, so last time when you took care of Dion Starring and we spoke with you before that fight, you were victorious. We wish you the very best in your fight with Frank Mir, and as always, not only